Welcome, everybody, to the Counter Clipping Show for July 18th, 2022. This is Counter Clipping Show number 82, and our topic tonight, which we'll get into, is fancy war games. What makes them fancy, and what are the fanciest? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about channel stuff. Don't really have any house news. I'm just still in, waiting mode. I am assured by the loan people that everything is fine, and they're just waiting for confirmation that the repairs that were requested by the appraiser are complete, so the appraiser can go back out there and verify that they're complete, and everything else should follow relatively swiftly. So what I hope that means is that we will be able to schedule closing this week sometime. That is my hope, because the projected closing date is next Wednesday, I believe. So I want to be able to actually, know what closing costs are. I want to know what the date is, and so I can get all that stuff lined up. And I don't have any of that information as of yet. So let us hope that everything works out. Tonight, we are clipping Balance of Powers, which we should handily finish this evening. And what I didn't finish was Singleton of Glendulin. I decided we were going back to Lagavulin 16, which is, frankly, assuming here that you have a taste for peated smoky whiskey. Lagavulin is a much higher end whiskey than Singleton of Glendulin, which is good, but this is really good. And I do like peaty whiskeys. This is bottled at 43%, which is good. So the higher alcohol percentage is good, not because just, it gets you drunk faster. If you're drinking scotch to get drunk, you've chosen the wrong beverage. But it's because alcohol is a carrier of flavor in whiskey, and you get more flavor in the whiskey if the alcohol percentage is higher. Now, you don't want to go too high necessarily, or it becomes impossible to drink. But you're going to dilute it down a little bit anyway. In a 40%, which is, standard for most distilled beverages, you're going to not add water necessarily, but maybe just a tiny bit. Is everything okay here? Are we all okay? I think we're okay. But in this stuff, I'm going to add just a slightly less tiny amount of water in something really strong, like a 52%, something like that, which I have had. You're going to need to put quite a bit of water into it. There's a locally made rye whiskey. I don't know if you can get it anymore. Here in Central Ohio, that, if you took it neat, it would take the top of your head clean off. So undesirable. You really want to put water in something like that. But it depends on the exact beverage too. Like I've said before, I don't put water in Ardbeg because it makes it taste like poop. So actual like poop. So before we get any farther, I'm going to take a sip of this fine beverage. Boy, that's good. All right. And say hello to Jeff Beeler, Vince Ree, Manders, John C. from the sunny Philippines, Joe Okabayashi, Daniel Barney, Michael Potts, Fast Hines, Captain Asparagus, James Whitmer, Daniel Silverthorne, John Longshore's in the house, Mike Anthony, Andrew Franca, Todd Walser is here, Tony from Tony's Board Life. Thanks for coming, Tony. Fast Hines, Charles Latorre, Christopher Prest, Husa Maldonado, Alan Salazar, Clint Randall, Michael Potts, Joe Perez. Did I get anybody? Ken X or Ken 10, Bill Simone from Flag City, USA. 6 Actual, Simon Weinberger, Charles Latorre, if I didn't get you already. Stigler is in the house. Chet Bell, Christopher Prest, I think I might have got you already. David Imperato, Jeffrey Wesovich, Mick Fudpucker, Brian Foley, Findle 70, The Command Tent, Carl Creeder from the Wargame Boot Camp, William Bird, Marty Sample from sunny New England, E4 Airman, also picked up the purple shirt. That is a new color combination. Everybody's got audio. I'm recording audio, so I assume that Jeff Wesovich was saying that before the music was on. John Clark, William Aarons, Loquitur Gaming, Rudy Armendariz, Fucko is in the house. Tim Zales. Dale Brady. John Stanley, Henry Sikorsky, Jeff Taylor, Mark McNair, Mike Burnett, Vince C. And I think we got everybody at this point. John Longshore has just received his Death in the Trenches. Pretty highly regarded game from what I can tell. So there is a new purple shirt. There are new t-shirt colors and a new coffee mug color as well. So do check out the merch store. It has returned to the video description. And everybody let me know, preferably via email and not here on the stream where I might miss it, if there are any problems with shipping or any bullshit like that. So since the Breeze Line catastrophe, the internet's gone out about every other day for about 5 minutes, and I don't know why. Well, I mean, I do know why. Breezeline sucks, and their hardware is, presumably not the finest, but I'm not blaming the hardware at this point since the same hardware worked flawlessly with the previous provider. So, lest anybody think that my opinion has changed, that Breezeline has ceased to suck, that is not the case. They continue to suck mightily. So it just hasn't been quite as bad lately. Mr. Schnizzle, welcome to the stream. So everybody remember to subscribe to the channel and thumbs up the video. Doing that helps the channel. Just being here helps the channel too. Contributing to the chat helps the channel. What will especially help me out at this very trying time is super chats and super stickers, which I will very much appreciate because that really helps support the channel. And it will also highlight your comments so that I don't potentially miss it, because when we get tons and tons and tons of people in here, as we are beginning to already, and I did remember all the social media posts about the stream today, which is something I haven't done in like a month and a half, then we should, it's hard to keep up with the chat. So easy to miss stuff. So hope everybody's having a good evening. It has been raining for 2 days straight here, and the humidity outside is fucking insufferable. I don't even know what the actual temperature is. It's hot, but I mean, the humidity was just absolutely bananas. So I have got a pods style moving solution in the driveway, and we have begun as of this past week to load it. So what is in the pod right now is some miscellaneous crap that we know we're not going to need between now and then. That's going to have to be like sorted and Tetrised into this thing. And we are going to, and 39 of those like bankers boxes that I bought from Costco of war games. There's, in addition to that, there are 5 totes of war games, which are like the oversized games, right? Your whiffs and your GTS games and stuff like that. John Longshore, thanks so much. I appreciate the support. Your support is always appreciated. Mike Anthony, to answer your question, not really sure. I suspect I make more on the t-shirts, but I could be wrong about that. I don't really mark any. I just kind of put everything in at the suggested price that Spring gives me, frankly. So I don't know what that noise was. So let's assume it was nothing important, like you're disconnected now. I do like the new mugs, though. The new mugs are black with a light colored Ardwulf Lair logo. So I'm pretty happy with those. I have actually yet to order myself one. I have one of the old white ones, which is already packed. There's a couple boxes of things like counter trays. I keep my ASL trays, ASL counters in those container store trays. And those are all loaded. In fact, all the ASL is loaded except for these couple of boxes here, one of which contains my overlays and the other of which contains unsorted scenarios. So probably could have consolidated that, to be completely truthful. So Mo from Mo's Game Table, thanks for stopping by. So from Texas, where it is almost as bad as it is anywhere on the planet. I believe Texas is currently on fire based on the news reports. So sorry if you live in Texas. But, I was going to be sorry. I'd have felt sorry for you anyway, because you live in Texas, but where at least the barbecue's good and the steak. The steak's good in Texas too. Not that I've spent that much time in Texas. Most of the time I spent in Texas was time I don't even count as having spent in Texas. I count it as having spent it in Mexico. And that's because I was working in Mexico at the time and only, driving back across the border at night to go to the hotel. So Mo says, this is a good one. Mo says that it is now equal to Mordor in sunny Texas where he is at, which I find completely believable. So yeah, this is true too. I mean, if you're in Texas and your power's out too, you are well and truly fucked. We're dependent on air conditioning. Ground temperature in I think Spain today was something like almost 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, they gave it in Celsius, and I have no real sense of what that means. So I had to look it up. What that was in Fahrenheit, which, I for scientific reasons, I prefer the metric measurements, but for like real world temperature type things, I don't know what 39 degrees Celsius means. I don't know what that feels like. So, John Stanley, thank you so much for the support. It is much appreciated. Much appreciated. Thank you. Charles Latour, up. 84 in San Jose, 77 San Diego. You poor bastard. San Jose is like it's got like a weird maritime climate. That's the case in that entire area. Most acutely in San Francisco, which has like its own distinct weather from the rest even of the area. But San Jose's, I mean, it's nice. Generally speaking, it's nice there. Of course, last time I was out there, it rained every day because that's just how I roll. You know what I'm saying? So I have not. If anybody got a giveaway of Red Storm from me, please let me know because I don't want it back. But I cannot find my copy of Red Storm. I have literally been through all the boxes twice. I have indexed all of the Wargame boxes. What numbered boxes of 1 to 39. What do they contain? And I cannot find the damn Red Storm. I don't know what happened to it. So let me get the ticker up here because we have news in the ticker, which you could digest at your convenience. Findle70, thank you so much. Yeah, so I didn't put anything in the pod over the weekend because it rained all weekend, and most of what I have packed up right now is made of paper. So I didn't want to deal with that. Plus, my driveway is a mud wrestling arena. So I didn't. And then today I went out and I put, 8-10 boxes in and like 5 totes. And I'm like, oh my God, it sucks out here. So I came back inside. But almost all of the file boxes of war games, I don't know about almost all, I think all of the file boxes of war games are in the storage unit now, are in the pod now. I do have a storage unit at the local storage unit facility, which thankfully is literally right down the street. And I've got to go there and repack some stuff and then start figuring out how we get that shit out of there. That may be truck stuff that we get on the day of the move, or the day before the move, however that works out. But I thought I was going to be really short of boxes, and I ended up, buying 70 of those boxes or something like that. But Mo's getting appraised tomorrow. So good luck on that, Mo. This whole process is a pain in the nuts. So I appreciate that everybody's, that's dealing with that is going through it. Ken Porter, 64 high on the Washington coast. So you guys might get hit this year with what you got hit with last year, where it was like 110 degrees or something like that. So our appraiser had some repairs that, not really even repairs. I mean, there was like some painting that needed to be done. None of them were like the problems that, well, one of them was, which was that there were some electrical issues. But they didn't take any pictures of the like taped together splices in the attic, which is something I don't feel comfortable with. And I'm going to get electrical engineer buddy to come and take care of it. or help me take care of it. I mean, it's just putting splices in boxes. It's not a hard thing. Whole thing should be totally doable in less than an hour. And there's a pipe I got to close off. But like none of that was stuff that the appraiser complained about. The appraiser was like, "Oh, some stuff's got to get painted." And Mike Anthony, thank you so much. The Satanic Majesty's contribution is appreciated as well. So thank you so much. So they wanted some like edging painted outside, and some like there's a lot of debris in the backyards. There's a lot of deadfall wood, but there's also a lot of there's like some pallets back there and some old plastic barrels and shit like that I can't think of no reason why I would need. I mean, if I decide I'm going to take up the hobby of collecting my own rainwater, then I'm prepared to go procure my own barrels. So that is not really much of a problem. So, all right. So that's all those. I really like the graphical design of this game, by the way. However, from an artistic standpoint, balance of powers we're talking about. But there are places where the pieces are hard to read. I know a lot of people complained about the helmets on the counters. That doesn't bother me at all. I thought that was a neat stylistic choice. Apparently that was a Bill Thomas thing, but I have no problem with that whatsoever. The markers are all real clear. I mean, it says what the markers are on the markers. And my opinion of the recent reprint of the Third World War and reprint of NATO Cold War Gone Hot are really, which the latter of which I've played the new version, are very high, but the markers are not that great. The markers are like, here's 3 different kinds of explosions on these markers that mean different things. Though that could be clearer. These markers tell you what they are. I like that. So everything is nominally on track. So let's hope for the best. So I don't know that I have anything else to say about that other than that I've started thinking about what walls are getting shelves on them. And I think my initial estimate of how much shelving I was going to need was a little overblown. I do want some room for expansion. But my initial estimates for how much shelving I was going to need was a little high. So I think we're going to be fine. I think we're going to have a lot of shelves in the office and one wall of shelves in the game space. And that pretty much is going to do it. And it will really help to optimize those spaces if I build those shelves myself rather than relying on IKEA or somebody else's, prefab shelves. Which can be made to look like really nice built-ins, but they will not fit exactly as far as I can tell. So there are now light-colored shirts as well, Charles. So you have a broader shirt selection now than you did. I actually had a couple of shirts that I set up, and then didn't feel, what are these? And then didn't feel comfortable. Interesting. And then didn't feel comfortable selling them. I came up with what I thought was a cool traveler themed shirt. And then I was like, I don't want to step on Mark Miller's toes on this. I'm not gonna put this up. I may make one for me, but I'm not gonna sell it. So, and I am not interested in working I'm guessing off the top of my head that if I really wanted to, I could work out some kind of deal with Mark Miller where I could get permission to do it, but I'm not going to do that. So, because Mark's a great guy. So, geez, that's a good question, Carl. I am not 100% sure what the largest size is. There might not be a bigger size than 3XL. So, the coffee mugs are also useful as chip pull containers, as has been pointed out elsewhere. So bear that in mind. So fanciest war games. And I want to kind of limit that to, first of all, to hex and counter games. Because if we start talking about, fancy games that are probably war games, like the Ares games, War of the Ring, for example. I mean, that's going to blow, in terms of fancy, that's going to blow hex and counter games off the table. So I want to kind of limit this to hex and counter games and talk about, what we feel constitutes really deluxe production values out of a hex and counter war game. And I'm including, it doesn't have to be a hexagon map, right? It has to be a traditional war game with a hex map or an area map or a point-to-point map or whatever. Those are all fine. One obvious thing that I think makes a game fancy is the mounted map, right? And a lot of Most Fearful Sacrifice is very fancy. It's very deluxe, and it is helped immeasurably by the map art. Frankly, the counters are really nice too, but I mean the map art is just like gorgeous, huge format Rick Barber map, where even the people who don't like Rick Barber maps because they find him hard to read are not going to have that problem with that map because it's just so big. So in the case of A Most Fearful Sacrifice specifically, it's not just about the fact that the map is mounted. It's also about the fact that the map is so big. You look in you read the description and you see 2 mounted maps, and they're flying pig maps, so they're somewhat oversized. But I mean, they're like twice the size of this table, right? I've got one of these IKEA Lindman tables over here that will be coming with me and get used for something. I don't know what. That is pretty close to the exact size of a standard sized war game map. And it is, I mean, I literally barely fit that one of those 2 maps folded in half on it, as we saw in the unboxing video. So it's a question not just of the map is really big, not just because it's mounted, and not just because it's Rick Barber, but because it's so big. Just the size alone adds a deluxeness to that game that I think a lot of otherwise deluxe games might not have. Okay. There we go. So now, of course, we also have war games with stand-ups, right? Examples would include, I don't think For the People has stand-ups. No, it doesn't, but Washington's War does. And there's another one of those. The Napoleonic Wars, I think, does as well. That to me feels fairly fancy. That's not quite like putting miniatures in the box, but I also think that fancy aside, I also feel like it is possible for a game to be big enough that a mounted map becomes more of a pain in the ass than it is a feature. And I think a lot of people will agree with that. I think 2 maps is the maximum possible size at which mounting makes sense. And even then, right? I mean, I remember actually buying the U.S. Civil War when it came out, the Mark Simonitz GMT U.S. Civil War, which is a great game, by the way, but I didn't know that at the time. I pretty much bought it because I looked at the box. I'm like, wow, this 2 mounted maps. Holy cow. That sounds a deluxe. And it's, it's a great game. And you'll have trouble fitting all the stuff in that 3-inch box because it's 2 mounted maps. So Mo agrees that you must raise your pinky when you are moving the counters around, right? So you gotta go like this with your. Oh, hold on. Wait a second. You've got to hold your tweezers with your pinky out. That is fancy. And I'm pretty sure that a poofy shirt might also be a prerequisite. Now, somebody mentioned pre-rounded corners. Vince, we're still working through that exact thing. somebody else mentioned pre-rounded corners, and I feel like that is a deluxe feature at this point. I think it's still kind of the exception for most publishers. GMT does it every once in a while, but they also have, like, the coin games have counters in them that aren't pre-rounded, right? And I, of course, will round them because that's the kind of guy I am. Poofy shirt is definitely necessary. I mean, poofy shirt and stylish floppy hats are I think, necessary for certain genres of gaming, of which Blackbeard is one. So that's Mo mentions that pre-rounded corners saved hours and hours for clipping, which is, of course, quite right. I am choosing to deluxify games on my own, but you know, that is a non-zero cost in time, right? So, and somebody else mentioned The Longest Day, which of course had, I think, 7 mounted maps or something like that, maybe 5 or 7 mounted maps, which is no longer the biggest game with mounted maps. I think at least ADG says that's World in Flames now, which that's got 4 full-size mounted maps in it, plus a mounted Americas map, a mounted Production Spiral, which probably doesn't count as a map, and if you got certain versions, you've got a mounted version of the Scandinavia map as well. So Stegler, you're going to get what you're asking for here, because one of the things that's coming out of this, all the garb is in this closet. And I am really almost at the point at which I can begin to extract the garb. And once the garb is extracted, it gets moved and it can go into a garb closet where I can find one of my several poofy shirts. And I'm totally doing that too. So, I mean, I could be wearing a kilt right now for all you guys know. I almost wore a kilt at Origins, and then I decided I didn't want to deal with it. So, because I'd end up accidentally flashing somebody or something like that, and I didn't want to have to worry about it. So that will happen, but not before the move. Miscellaneous markers. What are those? Old Guard hoodies. That would be fantastic to have that. I've seen like hoodies that have, like, you know, old fashioned Napoleonic type. I don't know if they're Napoleonic or not. I have to see uniforms and stuff. Those would be pretty cool. I would settle for sending me the link to that, to be honest. I have exactly 1 map that's on canvas/vinyl, and it is for Nicaea. It's either Nicaea or the Vote. It's one of the 2 things that I picked up from Hollandspiel at Origins this year. I don't have anything else on. Is that true? I don't think it is. I think it is. I think it is true that I don't have anything else on some kind of fancy paper, and I would consider that to be a pretty fancy thing. Now, those don't come in the Hollandspiel ones. They don't come standard. They come as add-ons, but they're not terribly expensive, which is why I bought the one for whatever game it was this year. John Longshore, yeah, my wife might give me problems with that too if I were to wear that out in civilian areas. That's plausible. Boy, that's good. That is good stuff. Doug Sunstead says he is not going to be wearing any Napoleonic French garb. So, well, I'm going to defer commenting on that topic because there's somebody's doing a podcast, which is going to be in late August. The recording is going to be in late August. And I'm going to be on it with some other people whose names I don't want to spill. I don't want to spoil somebody else's podcast. But the other names that will be on it will be names that you recognize. And we're going to talk about that kind of thing. So, I'm not sure I have a neoprene. So I have, if we're talking about like that mouse pad material, I do have, you've seen it in some unboxing videos. Before I got the Ardwulf's Lair mouse pad thing, I was using that star map for certain things. And I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do with that, or frankly, even where it is. So we will figure that out. I would be pretty hesitant to wear anything like that out in like general anyway, to be honest. Now the poofy shirt I would just wear. I mean, I'd be cool with that. I have in fact stopped at the gas station wearing a kilt and poofy shirt and gotten gas and walked in and gotten a Mountain Dew or whatever it was, and you know, people will give you weird looks and sometimes ask you if you are in a play, which is always hilarious. So now that's another thing. Roy McGough. First of all, Roy, thanks for stopping by. Puts longest day under plexi, even though it's mounted, and I agree. I would never wear a Michael Vittman shirt, not under no circumstances. But the plexi on mounted maps, yeah, we're playing Pacific War right now. We got everything under plexi, mounted maps and all of it. So there was a point at which I bought one of those shirts from Bell and Blade, and I'm not sure I recall which shirt it was. And I ended up never wearing it at even once, because then I would see it in the drawer and be like, fuck, I can't wear that. That is incredibly distasteful. So, and now those guys don't show up at events anymore. I am not going to be braiding my hair anytime soon. If I have anything to say about it, my hair will be insufficiently long to do such a thing. That would be weird. Not that weird, but it would be weird for me. Let me put it that way. So, but you got problems with Napoleonic topics too. So John Stanley says that the Outlander series, which my wife has watched, I haven't watched it. So I haven't, other than some vague idea that there's Scotsmen in it somewhere. I mean, kilts were also before then. The Scots had the right idea. And I say this as somebody who is apparently 34% Scottish. So the Scots had the right idea on the kilts all along, and it just took everybody else some time to catch up. I have two kilts. I have a it's not a utility kilt, it's a knockoff utility kilt, so it's not as nice. And I'm ashamed to say it was way too big when I bought it, and that it fits me perfectly now. But I also have a great kilt, which is basically a 9-yard rectangle of wool, which is a giant task to put on. But you know, when you'd put it on historically, you wouldn't take it off for months, right? So it wasn't something that you had to deal with. So it's a pain in the ass to wear, so I don't wear it very often. And in fact, I haven't worn it in years. However, if you are camping at the kind of event where you might have a kilt, it makes a pretty good blanket. So I have absolutely used it as a blanket more recently than I've worn it. So at some point, that's something we might talk about on the show, but that's not something I had intended to discuss this evening. So, but Poofy shirt will make an appearance at some point. That is a total promise. All right. So I think we're moving to tray number 2, and we're gonna handle. I probably compacted this a little more than was necessary. We're gonna handily get all this in 2 trays, which I figured we would. I mean, I did do this for this game before. I feel less bad about buying the game. I actually didn't buy it twice. The first time it was a gift, which means I feel worse about it. But 9x5 Stigler, 9x5, or 9 by 2, I should say, is the actual dimension of the rectangle. I feel less bad about acquiring this game twice than I do about clipping and sorting it twice. That, is where I am going to say this was a pain in the ass. So, but the game's good. I mean, I like the game. The hated British. So I can conceal about 18 beers in that great kilt, by the way. Now you can't see them because the bulk of the kilt conceals them. But you're obviously making a lot of noise when you're tramping around with 18 beers in your bottled beers, by the way, of beer in a kilt. So there was like a Scottish revival in the Victorian era, in which, a lot of that type of stuff kind of became Britishized, which is why you see the royal family sometimes, wearing kilts and things like that. It's not because they're of their Stuart ancestry. It's because of the Victorian. And this is where you started to see things like Scotland the Brave, which dates to the 18-something rather than the 1400s. So the balance up. So there's Block Oddity. This is a good question. There's a couple of World War I games that do this, actually. I believe Great War in Europe does as well, but it's sort of a more abstract pregame in the case of Great War in Europe, to the best of my recollection. I have not played Great War in Europe. That's a Ted Racer game, and it's an excellent game, but I haven't played it since the 90s, where I played this about 8 years ago. So, but yes, in Balance of Powers, there is a mechanism to play out a multi-stage July crisis, and it's actually pretty good. So Stigler mentions Jaws of Victory. And I will say that as straight X encounter games go, with like no particularly fancy components, there's no mounted map and no stand-ups or anything like that. It's just a hex encounter game. It's really nice. The art is all really good. It's impeccably the production design is impeccable. The booklets are well laid out. They're clear. They're attractive. They come in these little like foldy whole binder things. It's really, really nice. Richard Coker, welcome to the stream. Thanks for coming by. I think Jaws of Victory could. So if you're familiar with Killing Ground, my Killing Ground came used, right? I think it's just as nice. Yeah. So yes, I think that's true. So the funny thing about Pacific War is pretty fancy. It doesn't have rounded counters, but it does have 2 huge mounted maps and just a crap ton of paper in the box. So New England Simulations does really, I mean, this is why they only do a game every 3 or 4 years, right? Because when they do, they really take their time on it, and it ends up being a really beautiful package. Old School Tactical. I'm not crazy about the counters. They're fine. They're fine, but I am the maps are very attractive, and once again, Flying Pig, they're huge. The maps are huge. William Aarons, thank you so much. Much appreciated. He asks, could fancy games also include ones with point-to-point maps, such as War for America and Bandits and Tomahawks, or with 5/8 inch pre-rounded counters? Yes, although War for America has, I think, 9/16 inch counters, but they're just like regular counters. And it's 2 maps, so it's not mounted. I think there's a revised rule book for War for America coming, by the way, or coming or out, by the way. I have not had the opportunity to pay attention to that. And Andrew Franca, the Most Fearful Sacrifice has already been mentioned. So NES's Winter Victory is, I can imagine the same situation in which I am like, I bet it's going to be really nice, but I don't plan to buy it. And then it comes out and everybody loves it and I buy it. So that is the projected scenario for Winter's Victory. It's the Wellington's Victory system. Okay, so I'm really interested to see what New England Simulations can do with that system, because the consensus is that the original's kind of busted, and I'm curious to see what people think of the NES version in that context, and then I'm curious to see if somebody else will hop on that and start designing. Maybe NES, maybe somebody else will hop on that and start designing other games using that system, which I think would be great. So Stigler compares Rick Barber's art style to Tolkien's mapping style, which I don't agree with, but I don't necessarily think he's crazy either. There's that sort of elaborate scriptural text that Rick Barber used a lot, not on every map, but on a lot of maps. I mean, on World War II maps, he wouldn't use that, for example. And it kind of does have sort of a Middle-earthy type of look to it. Carl Prater from the Wargame Bootcamp mentions Atlantic Chase. So component wise, I think it's nice. I don't know that it's really, really fancy. However, what it does show, and this is a really good point, is that by fancy, we don't necessarily just mean the quality of the components, right? In the case of Atlantic Chase, you can really tell that a lot of effort went into development of that game and really polishing the rule book and really thinking outside the box in terms of how they were going to present that game. I agree with Rob Johnson's mention. I wish they'd have put the stripes on all sides of the little sticks. So it's a really nice production. It's a really nice package. Marty Sample mentions that because he's up there and talks to those guys all the time, that mentions Hell's Highway is, I think, going to be the next thing after Winter's Victory from New England Simulations. And that I'm going to buy. That is not going to be a question. That is a new version of the John Butterfield classic Hell's Highway, which has a very good reputation, which I have. But frankly, the map is not bad. I mean, it's like a 1985 game, something like that. It's a mid-80s game, so it's not incredibly fancy map wise. Well, it's not fancy at all. It's not it's zero fancy score on that thing. The map is okay considering its age. I can live with it. The counters are among the worst I have ever seen. And we actually talked about this a little bit on the stream with Dan the other night, with Mark Herman, where he talked about the big gutters. Steve Braun, thanks for subscribing. Much appreciated. I wish I could read that more easily. It really kind of sucks. I'd say Battle Cry is pretty fancy, especially considering who published it originally, which was, who did publish? Was that Avalon Hill? I thought so. Sometimes this Prophetus Albion mentioned Starfleet Battles, where you had the mega hex maps, which were basically just blown up maps. Somebody else is doing that right now. I think it's Lock and Load. They have a fancy name for the bigger maps with the bigger hexes. And of course, Deluxe ASL did that too. But the Starfleet Battles was the mega hex, and you got bigger counters as well, which was not something I felt that you really needed with Starfleet Battles. I felt like if you were going to use the mega hexes, it was probably because you were going to use miniatures, which you can get Star Trek type miniatures, and you could even at the time, but you definitely can now. Marty mentions that Hell's Highway will be play tested at Console World Expo, so that's awesome. I won't be seeing it. Fucko mentions that Thin Red Line's Deadly Northern Lights, which had to go, those 3 games went in their own box and they barely fit. sold out in like 72 hours or less, which is a total non-surprise, I have to say. That is pretty much par for the course with those guys. I do feel like I would rather they just print a few more, since they're obviously going. I don't know what their next thing in the pipeline is either. So Kingdom Death is super fancy, but it's a game that I can't really tell you about since I am not interested in any way. Findle70 mentions that Rick Barber was influenced by the official U.S. engineers maps. Yeah, and I think you can see that actually in the art, to be honest. Battlecry was Avalon Hill. Yep, that's what I thought, and then I started questioning myself. But before they were owned by Hasbro. Enemy Coast Ahead has nice components. I totally agree. Those, but I wouldn't call them fancy. I mean, so they also, I think, show some signs of really good development, but part of that is a structural decision on the part of the game where the game kind of presents you with, okay, so you got two games in the series. One is the Doolittle raid, one is the Dam Buster raid. So you scenario one, and you're intended to play them in order, is like you're dropping the bombs on the dam, okay? Or you're dropping the bombs over Tokyo or whatever it is, right? And you're literally just learning one mechanic. And then scenario two, you kind of take one step back and you say, okay, now we're approaching the dams and we have this stuff to do. So you're kind of learning as you go until by the last scenario, you are now playing the entire campaign, which starts, months before the mission, and you run the training and, potentially get discovered by spies and all that stuff. So I think what feels like superior development, and I think it effectively is really good development in those games, is really there because of just the structure of the way those games are set up. Andrew says our coin game's fancy with all the wooden blocks. Sure, I'd say so. But then again, not all the counters are pre-rounded, which is weird. That's a weird choice. Yes, Marengo, Napoleon. What's that Marengo game called? The Guns at Gettysburg and Napoleon's Triumph and whatever the Marengo game was called. Those also, and those I think had fancy maps too on a fancy material. I've never owned any of them, but I've seen them. Somebody had at least one of them at Origins. It's really nice. And the cool thing about the little sticks is it actually kind of makes it look like your troops are like lined up like they would be, on the actual battlefield. The Messing Up Rules mentions Twilight Struggle with the plastic pieces. Those plastic pieces are actually Bakelite. They spun it off, but the company, I used to work for the company that made Bakelite. And they just spun off or sold off, or I don't know how it worked because they laid me off before then. I almost bought them too, actually, and I decided not to because I don't play enough Twilight Struggle. So there's a company called Bakelite now, which is the spin-off company, basically. So, and Bakelite's kind of a classic Cold War plastic right there too. So that's appropriate too. The new versions of Successor and Hannibal and Hamilcar from Phalanx, I think that's Phalanx. Those are really nice. I haven't played any of them in those versions. I've played the original Hannibal, Rome versus Carthage, and it's a good game. Always interested in Successors, but Successors is a multiplayer game, and it's harder to get that going. I feel like I have enough multiplayer games that are hard to get going. I have, after all, Here I Stand and the Napoleonic Wars, which are both excellent games, but they are also multiplayer games. Napoleonic Wars kind of works as a two-player experience. Here I Stand does not. I mean, there's a two-player variant of Here I Stand, but I've never tried it. And I've never even talked to anybody who's tried it. Whereas, like playing the main game with 5 people, don't bother. Don't, just find something different. It's not worth your time without 6 or maybe 3 people. 3 people, it does kind of work. All right, so we are on the last sections of counters for balance of powers here, so we're making excellent progress. So Operation Greg Grant mentions Operation Dauntless, and I feel like this is the same system as Red Winter, I believe, and that's a game system that a lot of people really liked, and it just it doesn't seem like it's gotten a lot of gas lately. It hasn't gotten the attention that I think a lot of people probably feel that it deserves. Ooh, I found the Japanese units. I'm just throwing those on the floor right now. I'll pick them up later. I'm not going to make it into the can, so it's all fine. So I will tell you that I found the map art in Operation Dauntless to be off-putting, but I have traditional tastes when it comes to wargame map art, which is not to say that I only like, stuff that looks like Redmond Simonson did it, but I do have traditional tastes, right? I like, I like Mark Simonich's map art a lot, for example. I like Nick Escooby's map art. I like Charlie Kibler's map art, right? So I am maybe not. These are all the minors, which I didn't account for in my organization, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be fine since there's not really that many of them. Marty says that the Red Slash Games, I have nothing from Red Slash Games. Perfidious Albion, are we talking about like the phalanxes that are double-sized units? Because there's like so the original Great Battles of I'm doing this from memory, right? I acquired a copy of the original Great Battles of Alexander in that legacy deal a couple of years ago, and I don't recall it having an oversized units in it. However, the interesting thing about that is it is not a Richard Berg design. It is a Mark Herman design. Berg came in after that. So I don't know that any of the pre-Berg games did have the double-sized units. Now, there's a sextuple-sized unit somewhere, which is the Sacred Band of Thebes. There is a counter for that, and it eats up an entire compartment on its own. Whiff is definitely on the fancy side because of the number of mounted maps. I mean, Field Commander Napoleon, there's a fancy game right there. It's got like 7 mounted maps. So a very fancy production there. They're like 11 by 17 maps. So, I mean, we're not talking about, they're not that big, but. And all of the, in my opinion, I mean, all of the great campaigns of the American Civil War. So the original GBOH Alexander did have double-sized counters. Okay, I didn't remember that, but I haven't punched it, right? I mean, I've literally opened it once, thought I'm going to get rid of this. And then I opened it, I'm like, ooh, this is nice. I think I'm going to keep it. And I kept it. And it's now boxed up, and I didn't reopen it when I boxed it. So I like Joe Youst's maps a lot too. Yeah, be a good catch on that. So I'll do a video on, the new game space when we get into the new game space, right? Regardless of what happens, whenever that happens. And I'm not probably going to, unfortunately, Stigler, for you, he does most of his good work for Decision Games. So there's I guess we'll talk about this. I don't expect to miss a counter clipping show because I'm moving. Okay. I should, and I'll know before it happens, but I should be able to move on Thursday get internet in the new place on Thursday or Friday and be all set to do stream on Monday, right? I can always stream off the laptop if it comes to that. So I don't anticipate missing a counter clipping show because of the move. So just to get that out of the way. So, and maybe I'll even just walk around, that is something that I could do. So I actually don't really have the technology to do that, but I could try it. So up until that point, I'm going to be, including in the stream of what the shortlist games are that are in a box right here. There are 4 games in that box so far, and I think those are the only 4 because, well, there's more than 4. There's 4 boxes in that box. One of the boxes contains multiple games, so I could have an unpacking show. It would be a complete chaos. I thought Mark Mahaffey did the map for Kharkov battles. I'm willing to be corrected on that. It doesn't look like a Joe Youst map to me. I can tell you that. Brent from the Armchair Dragons is in the house. Thanks for stopping by. I also have here, and it's really close to full, the jar of extra counters, where the blank counters go. And it's really close to being full. And we really need to give serious consideration to dumping it or buying a bigger jar. So the Sea Lord series I have heard of at least. Still no experience with them, but I have at least heard of them. Okay. That's super. So the Triumph of Chaos components are really gorgeous. The game is riddled with errata, which is off-putting, but the Triumph of Chaos components, the cards, the counters, the maps are all really, really, really attractive. Okay, I'm looking for the rest of there's more Serbians. Are there more Serbians? Not many Serbians. I do have a GoPro. It's not a GoPro. It's a knockoff Chinese camera, but I'd have to figure out how to do audio narration over it, but I could, but I got to put shelves up, right? I mean, a lot of the stuff's just going to stay in boxes and totes for quite a while, right? I would like that to happen quickly, but there is a lot of chrome in Triumph of Chaos, but I think it's good chrome. I think Triumph of Chaos is worth my time. I don't know if it's worth your time. Black Oddity asks, do we feel like fanciness relates to concept of a gateway game? No, generally, I don't think there's a related things at all. I don't think the base version of Twilight Struggle, other than having a mounted map, is particularly fancy at all. And it has probably been the #1 gateway game for wargaming for the last 15 years. So the Greatest Day, that's a good point. And that's another one where, like several, but unfortunately not all games in the series, that it really shows that a ton of work and care was put into it, with, the just enormous quantity of scenarios and all that stuff. It's a really well-produced game. I might even do a video on me building shelves, but we'll see how that's actually going to go. I might also hire somebody to do it. That's also plausible. Oh, there's a Perfidious Albion. There is a shitload of errata for the 2nd edition Triumph of Chaos. An actual shitload. Christopher Press asked if solitaire-only games tend to be fancier. Not that I've noticed. Clint Randall mentions Thunder in the East. And Clint, I have to assume that you haven't played Thunder in the East, because if you had, you'd probably, maybe you were lucky, but I have personally looked at and or handled 3 different copies of the game. And in every case, the rulebooks fell apart because they were perfect bound. And each of the 3 copies had counters that had begun to delaminate. which is I'll do a whole house walk. I'll probably do more than one walkthrough video, but I'll do videos on the new place. So don't worry about that. The counters had begun to delaminate. I was generally speaking not really, although the maps are nice. I don't have any issues with the maps. I don't have any issues with the art. If we are saying that, say, the Phalanx successors is overproduced, which is a statement I'm neither agreeing with nor arguing with at this time, then I think Thunder in the East was overproduced as well. I think that all the different shapes and sizes of counters ends up being a distraction, more than it is a mnemonic aid. I could have lived with the 3 different sized counters for the units, but then you got round units, and you got round counters and arrow shaped counters and triangle. I don't know if there's triangle counters or not, but circular counters, and it's just very messy. And I felt like it wasn't necessary. It creates stacking issues that you really didn't need to have. I didn't really feel like it added all that much clarity. So I think it would be it's one of the top, and this is despite the fact that I think the game is pretty good. But the Brant, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it. I had it, and I don't know if I sold it or traded it or what, but I got rid of it as well. I might have thrown it in and pay it forward. And I would consider rebuying it in the future if GMT does a version that's a little more restrained in terms of all this crazy counters and all that other stuff. So now, to some extent, I am aware of this is me being an old fuddy-duddy, okay? So if somebody wants to make that comment, you're just being an old fuddy-duddy about that, then yeah, I think you're right about that. But I don't need any of that, right? And I felt like that distracted from the game system, which was doing some legitimately interesting things. Clint mentions that there's some rules evolution. Yeah, and I'm not really surprised about that either. I mean, the rules have changed to such an extent that they really do need to put a new edition out. Like, just a new rule book is not going to suffice. They've added, even to just the Thunder in the East stuff, they've added tons of cards, and I question whether GMT is going to go through the same printer that Victory Point Games used. So I suspect that GMT is going to say, no, we're printing through our usual printer. And therefore, you're going to have issues with non-matching components. Now, they said that wouldn't be a problem, but I don't necessarily think that's how it's going to shake out. And I don't think anybody's lying. I just don't think that's how it's going to shake out at the end. So I really like, somebody mentioned thinner counters with Liberty Roads and Victory Roads. I have not owned either game. I have seen both games. I do not like the counters. I think the division symbols on the counters are a cool idea when you say we're going to put the symbols for the divisions on the counters, but then you immediately run into in that case anyway, you run into problems with the division symbols are so big that they like eat the entire counter. And I don't think that's a good stylistic choice. This has turned out to be about to be a bitch fest, which was not my intention. I do feel that the Thunder in the East rules evolution situation was inevitable given what they were trying to do with that. However, and I appreciate that folks don't want to deal with that. So I am taking, it is a series I'm interested in. And I am taking a wait and see approach. I will wait and see what the next game looks like. And if they, do what they said they're going to do, which is basically to have all 5 games ready to go, that they can just crank them up, that would be cool. The maps in Liberty Roads and Victory Roads, I don't mind. It's not really my favorite style, but I don't have any objection to them. They're just too much. They're just, it's distracting. It distracts you from the information on the counter that you need, and which is smaller than it could have been for the sake of putting these giant divisional counters that eat up 2/3 of the counter. Well, I don't know if they're doing it all at once, but they're going to do. I mean, they're designing the whole series at once. Like I said, I'm happy to wait and see how that works out. It is a series that I think has a lot of potential. The Hexasim Eagles of France series, which is like 1805 Austerlitz, Rising Eagles, that series, those are really nice. Those are really well produced, pre-rounded counters. Not mounted maps, but the art is gorgeous on them, and the quality otherwise is all really high, and the games are good too. So there are games with hex-shaped counters. I have seen them. Not crazy about the idea, because you need the gutters on the hexes, the hexagons, to pick the counters up. So. They have reprinted those Hexasim Eagles of France games have been reprinted multiple times, so I figure they're probably going to reprint them again. I have also heard that Waterloo was next in the list of games to be reprinted, which is good because that's the one I couldn't get when I was buying them, and it's one of the reasons. So I have a pretty high opinion of those games. They're at a different scale than the Library of Napoleonic Battles. And by the way, the only war games that are not packed up are 5 or 6 games that are sitting in a storage unit, not in the thing in the driveway, but the actual storage unit. And this stuff. That's it. Everything else is packed. So I have announced in the ticker that Aracor, BCS Aracor, has made the short list of games that's going in the hand carry box. The Armor Group Center reprint is super nice. I wouldn't call it fancy, but it is. You get a slightly bigger box. It is a 2.5-inch box, oddly enough. I'm pretty sure I announced it as a 3-inch box, but it's a 2.5-inch box. And it's got, standard counters, but they're the newer, thicker GMT counters. Honestly, I feel like the most interesting of those games probably is Army Group Center. And that's just because of the historical timetable. So you've got Army Group North, Army Group Center, Army Group South. And then adding on to Army Group South, you have both Kiev de Rostov and Crimea, okay, which Crimea at least extends into 1942. And Kiev de Rostov might as well, but not by much if it does. So just based on the way the counterattacks happened, and where the German advances got stuck, and this might be to some extent a factor of me knowing more about what happens in that sector. That's possible. I feel like the interesting sectors are going to be Army Group Center and Army Group South, but then again, Army Group North is interesting too. I mean, a lot of the progress that was made during the entire war by the Germans was made in that period of 1941, right? I guess the question is, are you going to get to Leningrad in that time frame? So now that I've said all this out loud, I think, topically, I am most interested in the Army Group Center material, but because you are going to get but you're not going to get Operation Typhoon out of it, right? The game's going to end before that. So we're going to have to wait for Typhoon to come back out. There was talk at one point of combining the two into the reprint, that the reprint of Army Group Center was going to contain the Typhoon material too. But I don't know that was official or if that was just loose talk. I think that was just loose talk. Ben Burton, thanks for stopping by. First of all, yes, we have already mentioned a Most Fearful Sacrifice multiple times because it's really, really nice. I think it meets everyone's definition of fancy. Oh, so Stigler mentions the side-by-side comparison that Nathan from Wise Guy History did of Stalingrad 42 from GMT and Mark Simonich, and Fall Blau from Compass, and Jeff, I forget the designer's name now. It's Greg Blanchett's the designer on that. So advice, don't go buy a copy of Fall Blau on the secondary market. Compass has said they're going to reprint it. They want to do more games in that series. They've already done Fall Blau and Kharkov Battles, and I have Kharkov Battles, and it's pretty nice. So Nathan had some complaints. I don't know about complaints is the right word, but he seemed to feel that the air system in Army Group Center was a bit bloated as well. I can't vouch for how well it works, but I didn't feel like it was particularly bloated. There are plans to update the entire series, including Typhoon. I'm not sure about Crimea and Kiev to Rostov. That's kind of the problem with that. It took a long time for Crimea to sell out, and kind of a long time for Kiev to Rostov to sell out. There was a plan at one point to continue that series at least up to late 1942, and maybe even into 1943, but I have very little faith that those will actually materialize at this point. I will be delighted to be incorrect, just to say that out loud. Delighted to be wrong about that. I at this point, are we even going to see? What the hell is this? Oh, those are fins. Interesting. Okay, we'll put them with the fins. Are there fins? I'm just putting all the miners in the same compartment. It's fine. There's not that many of them. Yeah, it might need 2 compartments. It'll be fine. Another nice thing about this game is you get a world map and a map of Africa as well, so you can do the stuff that didn't happen in Europe, which is a thing that a lot of World War I games at this scale just ignore, which I don't like. I really like his channel. Yes, I've had him on this channel, so most people don't get that invite. So they did a lot of they meaning Vance and his development team did a lot of system streamlining and that kind of stuff with Army Group Center. So the official word on that, and you can take this with whatever mountain of salt you'd like, is that the other games in the series will, because all that is now done, and really all they have to do is make the other games comport to the same rules. So word is that that's expected to move a lot faster, and I hope that that is correct. I've got a bunch of counter crumbs in here somehow. All right, so we are done with Balance of Powers, and which is going to go here because it is going to get packed. So, because there's no chance I'm going to play it in the next couple of months. So, I have heard mixed things about this stuff from VUCA Simulations. Wardrobe mentioned, first of all, welcome to the stream. Welcome back, I should say. Battle for Normandy. I would love Sicily to come out at that scale. I think we're going to see the reprint of Battle for Normandy first. Then I think maybe we have a chance to see Sicily. I, for one, was all over that Sicily game. I love the topic, and the system is pretty good. So I was happy to buy that. I don't know if I'd consider Battle for Normandy fancy, but it's definitely a well-developed game. I have my reservations with it, but their reservations are not major. I probably played enough of it to do a review, but Just to Guard is another great channel. I mean, we had a thing where I would list great channels, and folks would go and subscribe to them, and that was great. David Thompson, thanks for stopping by. Very good. So we're talking about fancy games. Speaking of fancy games, David has designed a bunch of fancy games. All of the Undaunted stuff was so fancy that people complained about it because they cut off the guy's shoulders when they die cut the counters. So that's fancy right there. Callendale did a video not too long ago. I forget what about. But yes, please hit the like button, all that stuff. I don't like watch that when because I don't have the YouTube stream up. It's just in the way. And I probably could turn off desktop audio because I don't have any desktop audio, but I do. The opening music is desktop audio, so we don't want to do that. Callendale is defiant of the categories of YouTube content creators. That is absolutely true. So he's doing his own thing. So, and that's cool. I mean, I love Callendale. I love Enrico. I want Enrico to keep making content basically forever. So that's a great Greg Grant. That is a fabulous question. How David Thompson maintains his day job as an assassin for the CIA and yet manages to keep designing games as well. So that's the rumor anyway. This is unconfirmed rumor. So now I don't know that I'd call. I mean, I don't think that like Undaunted is very far afield from a hex encounter game at all. The Valiant Defense games are a little more so, but really those are not that dissimilar from States of Siege games. And nobody argues with those being war games. And we have now seen at least one pretty fancy States of Siege game out of straight States of Siege game out of Worthington, which redid Soviet Dawn relatively recently. Which, by the way, sold out super fast. I was like, it had come out, and I'm like, I really kind of like that. I think I'm going to go buy that. Fuck, it sold out. Damn it. What the hell? It only came out like 2 months ago. I don't know why GMT pulled Sicily off the P500 list. I have speculated in the past about what that was about. I don't know if I was right, so I'm not going to repeat that speculation. But the GMT did pull the Battle for Sicily off of the list. So see, no comment. He'd tell us, but he'd have to kill us. So we do have, let me talk about this. We do have, tomorrow we have Traveler Tuesday, and we have the stream with Dan. Now, I don't know how this is going to play out. There is a planned power outage locally here for electrical maintenance tomorrow, and that might screw that stream up. I got to work with Dan on that. So I don't know whether it's going to be here on this channel or on Dan's channel. It is scheduled to be here. So of course, the Fast Action Battle series, I don't know if revamped is the term I would use. Shuttered is more the term I would use. But the design team is taking a bunch of the ideas and repurposing them for a new game series. So block and load stuff is generally, I think, relatively fancy. So I've never played Heroes of Normandy. I cannot comment on that. So, I mean, in a very broad way, I agree with the statement of sort of a gateway game, but I cannot comment on Heroes of Normandy. Dan's got all kind of fancy hats. I can't afford fancy hats because I'm buying, a house. So, I mean, I have a fancy hat to be fair. It's in the garage and it's gonna make the move with us. It's probably the only piece of armor that I have that is going to survive. And it's like a cheap piece of shit too. So we're going to pour a tiny bit more Lagavulin since we have another 40 minutes to go. So I don't want to go crazy here, but so we have managed to keep up the Traveler Tuesday tradition for the last several weeks. And I'm kind of trying to work ahead. I've been meaning to mention this on this stream. I've been trying to work ahead to beyond the move, okay? But that requires me to go 3 to 4 weeks ahead, and not there yet. And one of the reasons why I don't like to work too far ahead is because of the patron, the thank you patrons card that I put at the end of the videos. Because let's say I get 3 patrons this week, and I got videos scheduled for 3 weeks. Well, they're not going to see their names on there for another month, and I think that's lame. However, in this case, they all fast action battles games on P500 were canceled, and I believe there were 2. So, and the news was in the GMT update like last month, not the most recent one, but I think the one before. So thanks so much, Clint. I appreciate that. So I'm going to not be able to avoid that in this case, right? I'm going to have to work ahead. So I'm kind of trying to work ahead, and I'm giving shout outs to the new patrons in the ticker in the stream, in the live stream, so that they won't feel left out, that I know, hey, thank you. I appreciate it. So thank you. I appreciate it. But, so I've got 2 weeks of Traveler Tuesdays already uploaded and scheduled. So that's done. I need another 2, which I'm not going to get done. I don't have an unboxing video scheduled for this week yet. I mean, it's scheduled. It's just not uploaded. So I don't know what it's going to be. I have videos in the can. It's not going to be a problem. I'll come up with something. It's just going to be to find the time. I have not been paying attention to the No Retreat operational game and how that's doing on P500. I feel like the only one of the games I still have is the Russian front one, and it's the one that's got the best reputation anyway. And I'd really like to try it. I kind of set it up once and then bounced off of it pretty hard. Daniel Silverthorne, thank you so much, very much appreciated. I will attempt to buy a fancy hat for it. I need a hat blank. I need to make a bicorn hat, and I need a hat blank. So I'm going to probably have somebody get me one from Penzic. Yeah, so that's another thing. I'm not sure if I mentioned this week or not. I may have mentioned it last week. So the charging and shipping notifications came out for Great Battles of Julius Caesar Deluxe, the expansion for Stalingrad 42, and the Musket and Pike dual pack, which I've been waiting for forever. And that's true of Great Battles of Julius Caesar as well. And I had to cancel the orders because I just couldn't afford. I didn't feel I could yank $150 or $175 out of the till for this closing right now, because it's going to be close, right? It's a lot of money, and well, some of it is already paid, not all of it is. So I'd really like to. I mean, you can get a paper map for Empire of the Sun, just get a first edition. So that's not hard. You may actually be able to call GMT and ask if they have any paper maps. That's possible. They may just have something sitting around, or call Enterprise Games. They may have it. I'm fine with Empire of the Sun having a mounted map now that it's in a 3-inch box. Let me put it that way. And unlike the last final box, Empire of the Sun is not making the final cut this time because we're playing Pacific War and we're not stopping. We might finish the Guadalcanal campaign this week. We'll see what that happens. Next in line is probably going to be the last Blitzkrieg, and I'm very much looking forward to that as well. So Emperor of the Sun is awesome. So yeah, I had 3 of the 4 as well, and I don't know what the number is, right? So I decided, screw it, I'll get the 3 things that I wanted. I'll just have to pay more for. More than likely, Miniature Market will have all of them in a couple of months, and I'll just get it from them. Or GMT will have a sale, and I'll get it from them. That'll be fine too. So that is a really attractive map, by the way, the Empire of the Sun map. I forget who did that map. Is that a Semenich map? I forget. Now I do have Fall of Saigon coming. And it's in the post, it's in the UPS post. So that's probably going to come this week. I haven't really been tracking the number. I've been, but I know it's in the mail. So that's probably going to show up this week. And there'll be an unboxing of that when it shows up. It's one of the expansions in the pipeline for Fire in the Lake, which I got to play at Buckeye Game Festing, which I liked. Black Eagles over Belgium. That'll be interesting. Be very curious to see that. 3 maps, 80 pre-orders needed. So there's a couple things. Speaking of that, Christopher Prest mentions Black Eagles over Belgium as needing love in the Legion Games pre-order system. And he might well be right. Block Oddity, thanks so much. Much appreciated. But I will also highly recommend A Hot Dry Season, Pat Mullen's Vietnam game on Operation Attleboro. It is terrific. It also needs some help on their pre-order system. They do nothing to get the word out on those things. They just kind of expect the orders will either materialize or they will not. So I really like their games. They have no ability to market them whatsoever. At least the ones I have, which I only have about 3 of them. So I'm aware that the Stalingrad expansion was only like $24 on pre-order, but the other 2 were less. It would have been about $150 plus shipping. Let me put it that way. I feel like I'm having focus issues with this camera, by the way, and I didn't feel like I was having focus issues with this camera until relatively recently. Maybe I should turn off autofocus. I don't know. Maybe it's the lighting in here that's being a problem. I'm not going to be able to fix it before the move, so the hell with that. So much appreciated all the support that has come through tonight. I really do appreciate that. There used to be like a tally on that, and I don't know where that is anymore. Let's check that. Yeah, that doesn't tell me anything. Doesn't tell me a thing. So all the numbers look good. It looks like we topped out at about 130, which is a pretty good number. So I'm very happy with that. I'm very happy that everybody turned out tonight. I do tend to kind of do a lot of this, and that might be creating a problem. I am in the center of the camera frame. The camera, the frame is cropped to me, so I am actually in the center. But I'll be able to, refine camera positioning and all that stuff once we get to the new place. I also need a wall mount for this microphone, which if you sound. I don't think High Frontier is fancy at all. Maybe the new one is. I don't know. The only one I've handled is the previous edition, which was I guess kind of fancy. Is that Napoleon's Resurgence? It is Napoleon's Resurgence, which is weird. It does have Stigler. I'm going to be super OCD about this. It does have a bottom border. Only the bottom border is the same color as the rest of the box. That's all. And the top border as well. So, Jeff Beeler, thanks so much. First of all, much appreciated. Fanciest wargame I have, not counting improvements that I have made to make it fancy. So, for example, my copy of the Napoleonic Wars, the Mark McLaughlin Napoleonic Wars, which is a terrific game, by the way. I have an entire color-coded dice kit for every nationality in the Napoleonic Wars. in the game, right? I think there's 8 factions, of which I think 2 or 3 of them you don't really play. They're just minors, but everybody gets their own specially colored dice. And that kit is in the game. Dale Brady, thank you so much. I really appreciate the support. Have fun painting those devil miniatures. Somebody got boned on, was Gimpy from Gimpy Gamer ordered some miniatures, and he got let's say a bad customer service experience. He did a 20-minute video ranting about it, which beats my rant about Breeze Line, by the way. And I was tempted, and I didn't want to do it and say, put a comment in and say, well, that's what you get for buying miniatures. But I did think it, admittedly. But no, it's a miniatures guy selling stuff on eBay who's apparently got a pretty shady idea of what constitutes both honest business practices and the eBay terms of service. So, so let me mention this, right? Because the Most Fearful Sacrifice is kind of expensive. Okay, I'm not going to say it's not an expensive game. It's a really nice game, and I think the price is justified. But you can get the print and play version from Wargame Vault for something like $30. Chuck, thanks for stopping by. Much appreciated. Crusade and Revolution looks really nice, actually. So I'm just trying to focus here. That's all. So while it's going to cost you a fair amount of money to build the components yourself, it is a way to get that game in play without necessarily dropping it in one big lump sum. Let me put it that way. So, I personally think print and play, I am notionally willing to do it, but it's a pain in the ass. So it would have to be a very special project for me to really want to do all the work that it takes to do a full print and play game. That's not a really small game. For war games, right? So if you were going to do something like, say, Barbarian Prince as a print and play, and you can get all the print and play files for Barbarian Prince, which is a sort of magnificent Dwarf Star Solitaire game from the mid 80s. You don't really need, you're not printing. There are some counters and markers and stuff, but you're really not doing that much of that. You just really got to print the booklets and the map and stuff like that. That I'd be a little more amenable to taking on. Print and play counters sounds like a pain in the nuts. So my eyes turn pro. That's my glasses, actually. That's the UV coating on the fancy glasses. My glasses are very fancy. Ooh. $100 to get the map printed. Are you getting the map printed on some kind of fancy material like vinyl or canvas or, gold leaf or stone tablets or something like that? Because that would be pretty cool. World in Flames has been mentioned. So what's back to the question that we asked of what's my Sofa Kings. Thank you so much for the support and for your welcome, for keeping Stigler reasonable. I wonder, World of Flames is actually the game that sprang to mind, right? Because of the 6 mounted maps, one of which is the production spiral, not a map. There's still 6 mounted maps with the Scandinavian map. So there you go. I haven't heard anything about them doing a new Africa map. I heard that they were going to, but I haven't heard that it's coming. Christopher Press just got his counters back for the printer. Cost $60 Canadian. That doesn't sound that bad, actually. So if I was going to redesign the counters for any game that I have, it would be flat top for a couple of reasons. One, mine is mostly unpunched. And you almost might as well throw the box away. There's no way you could fit that game in that box in any reasonable way. So the box is, and that's why you very seldom see copies of Flat Top where the box is not absolutely wrecked. So Flat Top there's a lot of counters in that game, right? You'd have to do a lot of counters, but a lot of them are the same too, right? You got this, this 5 Kate counters. You make 6 of them or whatever there is. So, and I think I could make better looking counters, frankly, than the counters out of Flat Top. Flat Top is not a graphically attractive game. Okay, the Avalon Hill one maybe looks a tiny bit better, but man, that map is bad. That is a bad map. So, I mean, it's not unplayable. That's not the problem. It's just not an attractive map at all. Local Tour Gaming mentioned Three Dog as the fanciest game. It's 3 Days of Gettysburg, Great Battles of the American Civil War. It's a good game. I don't consider it fancy particularly. The best TSWW starter game. John Longshore is a better person to ask this question than me. However, my recommendation for best TSWW starter game is going to be Balkan Hell. Okay, there's a new version of it either out or coming soon, and it's a nice little. I haven't played it, but I have it and I've looked at it, and that scenario, that like topic in that system should be a very palatable, manageable, not really a small game, but a much more manageable than say Bayan Barbarossa with its 10 maps or whatever, 30 maps and 6,000 pieces or whatever the hell's in the thing. They got a sale running. I don't know if it's running anymore or not, where you could buy, I think, Barbarossa and Hakapala for, I think, £300, which is a great price considering what their MSRP is, but I can't spend that right now. So Hex to Hex, thanks for stopping by. Yeah, Balkan Hell is Balkan Fury. Yeah, it's Balkan Fury. You're right. Thank you, Mr. Duck Overlord, and welcome to the stream. And I like those maps. They're definitely an old-fashioned style of maps, but I do like those maps. So we talked about this a little bit on Facebook a couple days ago about the Three Dog revision and what it's going to include. And it's basically going to bring Three Dog up to the current rules system standard and then add scenarios, right? Another annoying thing that we played, there's 2 optional rules that I think, I'm not 100% sure they're optional now, but they were optional in the version that we played, that I would never choose to play Great Battles of the American Civil War without, which is the fatigue rule and the ammo rule. Okay. However, the 3rd edition Three Dog does not contain the ammo markers. I had to scavenge them from my copy of Twin Peaks. And of course, Twin Peaks is Cedar Mountain and South Mountain. Those are obviously way smaller battles than Gettysburg. So you really don't have enough of them. I think that was a bad move when that version of Three Dog, especially since it's like the 3rd GMT edition of Three Dog, and there had been 2 previous editions of Terrible Swift Sword. So I don't feel like there was a good excuse for that fault in that game. Let me put it that way. A lot of people like the GMT East Front series. I have all of them, so I hope. And I haven't played anything but the small scenarios. So I don't consider myself to have a well-formed opinion on that series yet. But a lot of people do really like that series. And the fact that a lot of interest in that series dissipated, I think, frankly, because there were no games in print for like 15 years or 10 years or something like that. So... but now with the new Army Group Center in print, I think it is beginning to attract attention once again. There is some good video on it from the Counterattack playthrough series. The YouTube channel is called Counterattack. So check that out. I don't know how, error free he was, but those are some pretty good videos of, I believe, Kiev de Rostov. My fanciest game. I mean, so far I'm not beaten out with. It might be a Most Fearful Sacrifice. I think that's certainly in the running because of the maps. I mean, they're so my favorite war game maps are the Great Campaigns of the American Civil War maps. Okay. And the Rick Barber map, I think, doesn't displace that, but I think it's right up there. I think it's right up there with my favorite war game maps. It's a really attractive map. And of course, Rick Barber was intimately familiar with the Gettysburg. I mean, he was a tour guide at Gettysburg. He was intimately familiar with the battleground as well. So, well, if they even get to the Stalingrad portions, I'll be satisfied if we get new versions of Army Group North and Army Group South. And then at least you could put those 3 games together. It would be nice if we got a Case Blue game, right? You know, like a early 42 to, I mean, Case Blue, it doesn't start in early 42. The 3 Barbarossa games, Army Group North, Army Group South, Army Group Center, I think run to September, from June to September of 1941. That sounds correct. So just before Operation Typhoon. So you'd have to extend all of them in time into June or so of 42 to get to Case Blue. And while you wouldn't need really much more map space in Army Group North, you would in Army Group South because Typhoon was its own game. And you definitely would in Army Group South, which would be, literally a Case Blue size game, right? Because the map scale in EFS is exactly the same as it is in OCS. So I'd love to see that. I would love to see that series to try to tackle those topics. And I got to admit to some reservations about, hey, so there's like structural pieces of EFS, like the asymmetric turn sequence, that are set up in such a way that they reinforce the different doctrines and the different challenges the two sides, right? Well, the Soviet army evolves a lot between June of 1941 and say June of 1942, let alone June of 1943, right? So when you start getting into early 43, you're looking at a vastly different Red Army than you did in June of 1941. And I don't know how the system will address that. That's a lot of additional design work that, unlike the existing stuff, which just has to be kind of brought up to current standards and revised, has not yet been done. So Sekigahara is pretty nice. I don't have it. I haven't played it. It's pretty nice. So there are a lot of smaller scenarios. I mean, watch my unboxing video. There's a ton of smaller scenarios in A Most Fearful Sacrifice. So it's not like you're stuck playing the campaign game. And it does look like a highly playable campaign game, like the kind of game that you could play in a like a normal length convention, not a Consim World length convention. So this is fair. It might be that simple. I don't know. I just don't know how they would choose to handle it. I am not following those groups other than to kind of pay attention to when they're saying new games come out. So Imperial Struggle's pretty fancy thinking about it. I mean, it's got a lot of really fancy pieces. It looks great. It wasn't that crazy about the actual games. So okay, so let me start that over. Already on P500 are the reprints of Army Group North, which is the next one in line, and Army Group South. There is no current P500 listing for Kiev to Rostov, which you would need if you wanted to do Stalingrad because it's on the way. Or Crimea. So I don't know. And my guess is if they redid Kiev to Rostov, they would put Crimea in there as well. I'm just guessing that. I do have the Granada game from Compass, and it does look really nice, I got to say. So, Stigler, I appreciate you stopping by. Thanks, and have a great night. Or unless you're saying goodbye to Messing Up Rules and you're staying around, which is great too. Messing Up Rules, have a great night. So it's all good. So yeah, I think right now, Whiff and Most Fearful Sacrifice are in. AGS is on the P500 list, and GMT will honor those prices. I mean, they did with Army Group North, which looked like an absolutely bananas price by the time it came out. It was like $55 pre-order price, and it's got, or it might even have been less than that, and it's got like 5 maps and 4 counter sheets and tons of paper and tons of play aids and setup charts and all that stuff. It's a really well developed package. But then again, all of the Vance von Bory's GMT East Front games are really nice packages. They all had that even back in the day. The original ones did too. It's just that the new one is nicer. So it's all color, which is nice. That the setup cards are in color, which is really nice. And the Finnish trilogy. That's a good call, actually. Those are fairly fancy. Most Fearful Sacrifice is the pretty new Gettysburg game from Flying Pig Games. So check them out if you're interested. The game system looks good too. I haven't had a chance to play it. I have played the Road series. It is fantastic. I love that series. And the reprint of Roads to Leningrad just choked on P500. It never got above about 175. It just didn't go anywhere. And I don't know why. It's a great series. I would buy another 5 games in that series without any questions asked. I mean, so I don't blame GMT for the delay in the East Front series. It is the designer and his team that has taken that long to get it done, and there were reasons, right? I mean, these things are going to happen. It has taken a really long time, and they were on P500 not for 20 years, but they were on P500 for a long time. So those were some of the first GMT games I bought. Actually, was Army Group Center and Army Group South. I don't think I had Army Group North originally, but I also had Typhoon. And now I have all 5, however many of them there are. I have them all now. So you're right. It is GMT is going to take it on the nose for that, even if they're not the ones that are responsible for this. But I think GMT is kind of trying to reimagine the development pipeline. That's really not going to show for a couple of years. And the Mystery Wizard. By all accounts, Mystery Wizard was a delightful game, but it is simply not something that interested GMT's audience. I mean, I think the only reason that the sci-fi games that they've done have done as well as they have, and I'm talking about Space Empires 4X, which is great, Talon, which ties into Space Empires 4X. Those I think did well because they're sci-fi, but they are really closely war game, not even war game adjacent. They're war games, right? And then the other example that I can think of is Red Dust Rebellion, which is a coin game, right? They could slap, coin box of poop and P500 and 500 people would pre-order it. So, and not that I'm saying anything about Red Dust Rebellion. It actually looks really neat. But the Time for Trumpets is a good call on that too. So Time for Trumpets is 5 maps, like 10 counter sheets. It's a huge game. They're oversized counters too. There's a lot of scenarios. There's a lot of development in that. It is a really pretty nice game. Nuts Publishing is apparently new French military game. Yes, exactly. That's Perfidious Albion. That's exactly right. I would imagine, and I hope that Vance is working on EFS rather than the new Rhodes games. I would prefer to see the EFS project at least all reprinted. But I really love the Rhodes games, and if somebody else wanted to do a game on those topics, I would happily buy those. I also think, though, that they are ways to repurpose some of the research that went into Army Group Center and Army Group North. So that kind of ties them to Vance and his group, right? Time for Trumpets. I've heard mixed things about Time for Trumpets. Generally speaking, the people who are big fans of and familiar with Bitter Woods really like it. I've never played Bitter Woods. I still have mine. looked at it and I think it's a bit impenetrable. I think if you know how to play Bitter Woods, you'll pick it up very quickly. Those people seem to like it very much. It may come to be considered the definitive bulge game, which is why I picked it up. And it is a big game with a big footprint, a lot of time to play it, and it's expensive. So if you really do have to be a Belge person to go for it, I think. So the reprint for Dark Tower. This is the electronic Dark Tower. That's out. People were carrying it around at Origins. People were playing it at Origins. Now, I don't know if you can just order it on the internet, but I imagine you can. I asked how much it was, and I forget what the number was, but it was a number that I was unprepared to pay. Let me put it that way. I'd already spent the money by then, so it was irrelevant for me. So Abraxas mentions it's a non-series game. It's kind of its own system, right? It is, I'm told, Bitter Woods with about an order of magnitude more chrome. I think that's a fair assessment, and I would rather put the time to learning that or mastering that into Wacht am Rhein rather than into Last Blitzkrieg, than put it into Time for Trumpets personally. Now, that said, if I went to a convention, we'll get to the conventions question in a second. If we went to a convention and I saw that there was a Time for Trumpets game, I would totally consider playing it. I wouldn't mind trying it, right? But if I'm going to self-motivate, I'm going to pick Wacht am Rhein or Last Blitzkrieg. Duck Overlord asks, what are the big board gaming conventions? So I can't really speak to board gaming too much. I can only speak to wargaming. So GMT sponsors weekends at the warehouse a couple of times a year. Those are in their warehouse in Central California. They also have GMT East, which is in White Plains, New York, which is just outside of New York City. So if you're GMT focused, I don't know that there's a rule that you got to play GMT games there. I don't believe that's the case. So those are supposed to be good events. I haven't been. I have been to Compass Games event, Compass Games Expo. That is held Veterans Day weekend. It's kind of like a 5-day event. It's Veterans Day weekend, which is November. And that's a really good event. And you definitely don't have to just play Compass Games there, because I saw, New England Simulations was there, and a bunch of GMT stuff was getting played and all kinds of other stuff. Multiman has a Winter Offensive, which is in January in the Baltimore, D.C. area. I think it's closer to Baltimore than it is to D.C., which is only like a 6-hour drive from Columbus. It'll be longer from Cleveland, but that's not... I might end up making that trip, but I'm pretty much done for conventions for this year because of the house, right? So these are all so far 4 or 5 day events. The longer events where you could play longer, bigger footprint games are WBC, which is in Seven Springs, Pennsylvania. It's about an hour or two from Pittsburgh. So it's on the western side of Pennsylvania, not the eastern side. It is a relatively pricey location, but you have, a lot of war games there, but there's also a lot of Euro games and like older Avalon Hill games that aren't necessarily war games and stuff like that. If you're in North Carolina, there is Mace, which is down there. And boy, you got to go head over to the Armchair Dragoons site. There's a link in the video description with the war game event calendar, but Brant from the Armchair Dragoons is in North Carolina. So you got Gamers Armory down there, and I know Mace is down there, and I'm pretty sure there's at least one other convention down there. That's a war game heavy convention. You've also got Origins, which is not a war game heavy convention, but we're doing our best. You've got Gen Con, which sometimes hosts like a coin fest type of thing. I don't know that that's happening this year. That's in Indianapolis. Origins is in Columbus, Ohio. The big monster game convention is the Consim World Expo in Tempe, Arizona. Tempe, if you don't know, is a suburb of Phoenix. So you'd be flying into Phoenix. It's an expensive location unless you live within driving distance which you don't unless you live in, Texas or someplace like that, and maybe not even then. But or people drive down from Denver and that kind of stuff. But I'm sure not driving to Arizona from Ohio. So for that reason and the site, it's fairly expensive. But both WBC and Console World Expo are like 8-day conventions, so you have more time in which to play big things. The only other, so there's also Dice Tower and Dice Tower. There's also Consim World South, which was held in Texas. Which Jeff Smith are we talking about? Ag Raid Day. There's also, I forget what the Consim World thing in Consim World Dallas, right? That's what we'll call it. Which is another shorter event, but it's run by John Krantz, who runs the Consim World Expo and the Consim World site. Jeff Smith, the Frugal Gourmet, is that who we're talking about? So last year of Marcon here too, in Columbus, which is too bad because I never got to go. I guess it is the last May. Was that the convention? Well, there was another convention down there as well. So Jeff Smith of Macedon. Okay, I do not know that individual. George R. R. Martin shops at Michigan Toy Soldier since the 70s. I know George is a big gamer, actually. George's wild cards came out of a Super World game of all things. So Block Oddity, thanks for stopping by. We will be back next Monday with more action. Other big conventions. So there's Winterfest in Sandusky, Ohio, which is in February. Now that I'm going to. That is more of a club con than it is like an open con. So if you want to go talk to somebody who goes, and we'll figure out something. That can be me. Everybody's got my email address at this point, ardwulfslair@gmail.com. So people who want to come to Winterfest, let me know. We'll see if we can find a place for you. We want to control the attendance, but we also we don't want to exclude people either if we can avoid it, right? Good counter clipper. So the counter clipper I use is the Oregon Laminations. The one I was using to clip today is the Oregon Laminations Standard, not Deluxe, 2.5 millimeter corner rounder. You can get it on directly from Oregon Laminations, or you can buy it on Amazon. And if you buy it on Amazon now, so it used to be it was cheaper if you got it directly through Oregon Laminations, but now they're set up as a consignment vendor. So if you order it through Amazon, it's the same price, and Oregon Laminations ships it to you. So, and I think they had to call me because they how did that work out? Somebody I shipped a corner counter as a giveaway, and it came back to me because they didn't give me the right name. Christopher Press, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Very much appreciated. Now is great timing too, because they're about to pay me. So yes, please do thumbs up the video. November 2022 in Charlotte will be the last May. Oh, that May. Okay, that Jeff Smith. Okay. Yeah, that's unfortunate. PressCon, yeah, in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's not that's very drivable. PressCon is the other one in that general vicinity that I was thinking of, actually. But this is generally speaking a lot of wargamers in the DC metro area, right? Which includes, Baltimore. Winter Offensive is down in that area. And if you're an ASL person, so Winter Offensive is, when I was there, they didn't have one this year. But when we went, it was probably about 60% ASL, about 30% Great Campaigns of the American Civil War, and about 10% everything else. Most of everything else was stuff from the gamers, OCS or BCS or SCS, and a scattering of other things. So it's a good event, but be aware of what the event mix, the mix of games looks like, right? Be prepared to play ASL or Great Campaigns of the American Civil War or something like that. And you could just walk in and get into ASL or GCACW. But you can't necessarily do that with anything else. So my big advice for wargame conventions is, if it's a wargame convention and not like Origins or Dice Tower or something like that, or BGG Con, is know what you're going to play when you get on the plane. For like Consim World Expo, there's a big chart on their website that has all the people that are running the different events with their email addresses. Contact them, talk to them, reserve a spot, right? That's my advice for that. I don't believe this in a second. Let me be more clear about this. I'd be concerned about the strength of the plastic, but what you could do is redesign the part to not be hollow, and that would add a lot of strength to it. And you may be able to control the hardness of the plastic that you're using in 3D printing. This is a topic we'll be exploring once I get a 3D printer. I don't know enough about it. So the problem with the deluxe cutter, for those who don't know, is it tends to break. They are 3D printing houses now, out of concrete, no less. It tends to break. And I think that's ultimately due to bad design of that particular piece. It also has to do with the material quality that went into it, right? If you got a good batch of strong plastic, it might never break. If you got a shitty batch, it might break in the second week, right? Mine lasted about 6 months. And there's ways to fix it. You could try and screw it together with epoxy. You can replace the handle with it, make your own wooden replacement handle, which is what I have. There's ways to fix it. I just decided I was going to go with the standard clipper, and I have been, I very seldom, the standard clipper is not completely misclip proof, which the deluxe clipper is. So you got to go a little slower, and there's a little bit more of a feel curve that you got to kind of learn your way through, and know when it's going to bite wrong and that kind of stuff. But I haven't misclipped a counter in months, so I'm not really hung up about that. I'm perfectly happy with the non deluxe clipper, and it's cheaper. So, and it's all metal. You can run it over with the car, and it'll be fine. The only thing that's not metal on it is the plastic dipped handles. So, all right, folks. So let's tomorrow we have Traveler Tuesday. The Traveler Tuesday video is the Glorious Empire, relatively recent thing from Mongoose Publishing. Thursday, we should have an unboxing video, so that'll be great too. Also, tomorrow, we should have the stream with Dan, which again might be here if the power's on. If not, it'll be on Dan's channel, and I will go in on my phone, which is, might suck, but it, might not, might work okay. I don't know. We'll see how it works out. So I want to thank everybody for stopping by. I want to thank everybody who has been tremendously generous tonight. I really appreciate that. It's, let's just say it's going to help, right? So thanks very much for all the super chats and super stickers that we've had tonight. I really appreciate that. Thumbs up the video and do all that, and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. I really appreciate everybody coming out week after week. This is always great. We will be back next Monday, breeze line permitting, with more counterclipping goodness. Everybody have a great night.